Greetings, Stardust, and welcome to the Resonant Futures podcast, the place where we have conversations at the edge of the dawn of a new civilization for humanity. And it is the intention of this space to bring radical hope forward in a time that I know so much is streaming in, so much information, so much to be concerned about in the world, and with due cause. And I have been tracking for the last 20 years, and especially the last 5 years, the movements that carry radical hope for the future: the regenerative movement, the human potential movement, the consciousness movement. This is a time where we are calling for radical hope in the face of so much change that actually is an opportunity to build the new operating meta system for the planet. This is being unlocked through technology. This is being unlocked through our interconnectivity to one another and our access to tools and resources. And there are so many important conversations to be had around this. I can't wait to share with you the incredible speakers that I will be bringing here into this space. This will be weaving with my own personal transmissions. Those of you who know me as an astrologer and who follow me for that content, I will be touching on that. And it is also my goal to present this information in a way that it can serve visionaries, founders, leaders, builders, creatives, healers for the new earth. Those who are dedicated to building a new system. It is my intention to be of service to you with this knowledge and information, because JP Morgan said, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. And that is with good reason. I like to call astrology the ultimate cheat code for life. When I reached a level of mastery with astrology, which really only comes with thousands of charts, thousands of hours of studying patterns, recognizing them, studying history, looking for correspondences, and beginning to see these gears within gears of time that are turning. Yes, free will is real. Yes, we can't always predict with perfect accuracy, and yet sometimes we do. But what we are mostly doing is forecasting the weather. So this space will be for you if you are building, launching, creating a movement, a platform, a technology that is regenerative, that is human focused, that honors nature, that honors a system of values that align with love and beauty and truth and radical hope. And as always, please like and subscribe, share, to start getting this out to the people that I can be most of service to. It is my greatest honor to be in my Dharma, to be in my purpose, and serve in this way. That being said, when I say astrological words, if they don't mean anything to you, just ignore them and focus on the next thing I say, which will always tell you in plain language what it means. I know that this is a major barrier for many leaders and teachers and people who aren't familiar with astrology. They hear this other language and want to check out. I want to be able to build a bridge between both. I want to validate what I am saying within the astrological paradigm, theory, and science. So the reason that I state Jupiter opposite Pluto, something we'll be talking about today, is for those who are in that to research that more deeply, to know what I am referencing, and to be able to see the time frame that we are working with. But do not fear. You didn't miss anything if you don't understand any astrological terms. I will always tell you what it means afterwards. And this is also what I say to people when I'm doing readings with them. I've also spent many years practicing how to speak about the astrology without having to use astrological words, but it is also valuable for those who want to deepen their study. And I know that I will have both of these kinds of listeners here. I want you both to feel welcome, to feel held, and to feel clarity. So let's dive into the July report. July 2026 is arguably the most powerful month of 2026. I know there's a lot of sensationalism in astrology on the interwebs around how this information is presented. And I can tell you from a grounded space that this is actually one of the most powerful times in history, as indicated by the reflective mirror of the solar system, which works because everything in creation is fractal holographic, as is shown by quantum physics, as is being revealed through modern science as it expands itself beyond materialist reductionism and starts to look at the unseen forces that are undeniably at play in the universe. For example, the same way our DNA informs our body, we can't see our DNA. We don't really understand how it works, yet we trust the scientists who are studying it for not nearly as long as astrologers have been studying astrology. We trust them. That DNA is the information code for our body. We also know that epigenetics is true. And so we can change our environment or change our input and get a different result from our DNA. This is also true of the spiral of the Milky Way and the spiral of the planets in our solar system, right? They are the fractal holographic representation of the DNA, which informs the body. And then this informs the soul or the higher purpose, the higher universal mechanics at play. It has been studied and shown by great ancient scientists who we may now categorize in the spiritual world. But there's a book called The Holy Science by Sri Yukteswar, which literally shows that the Vedics had been tracking the evolution of consciousness in these cycles of rising in consciousness and falling in consciousness over thousands and thousands of years. This is called the Yuga cycles. You might be familiar. According to that system, we are at the end of a 2,100-year age of Pisces and entering a 2,100-year age of Aquarius. And I'm writing a book right now called Becoming Future Human that moves through everything that we see happening in the world, all of the trends, all of the patterns, all of the breakthroughs, all of this unprecedented thing after unprecedented breakthrough on the planet, and tracking what happened in the last 2,000-year age, how these energies played out, and then learning from that and applying that to this age. And the things it's revealing to me are phenomenal. And it is showing me where we want to be mindful, where we need to watch even our own psyche, our own psychology, our own biology. So in this space, in my transmissions, I am weaving neuroscience, a degree in cellular biology, a degree in environmental science and regenerative communities and cultures, study of TCM, Ayurveda, nutrition, alternative healing. I'm bringing in breath work and yogic sciences, Taoist, Qigong, Tai Chi. I say this to bring you a frame of where I have studied and the different sciences and systems that I'm bringing in. I'm also weaving in civilizational cycles in a historical context and mapping those to planetary cycles, which just so happen to sync perfectly. And we are at the convergence of multiple of these cycles ending and restarting from 2026 to 2032. We are in the convergence of all of these cycles ending and beginning, restarting between 2026 and 2030. too. And 2026 is the year to launch. If you have a platform, if you have a project, we can astrologically confirm the best ideal timing for any project, be that, I was going to say a birth, but you can't plan those. You can, but many are not choosing to. They're allowing children to choose that. But we can choose an ideal time to launch, to reach the public, to increase visibility. JP Morgan said millionaires do not use astrology, billionaires do. And I can tell you, Elon Musk is surely using it, because that SpaceX IPO was a very powerful electional chart, as we call them in astrology, a chart, a moment that is chosen because it is auspicious for the endeavor and the results we wish for that endeavor to produce. So this July, I've been advising everyone I'm working with, launch it, be ready by July of 26. I've been saying this for the last couple of years. If we are not ready to launch fully, then I'm seeing all around me, we are birthing this, it's like this feeling in the collective that we can no longer stay silent, that we can no longer continue down the path we have been going, lest we face our own self-destruction. When I move through the social media spaces right now, I see major themes that I want to be speaking about today that are alive in July's astrology everywhere. People are calling out the taxation of our labor. People are done with the old 9-to-5 system. People are figuring out how to share their voice. People are releasing old identities and stepping into new ones. People are in massive rebrands. This also goes for companies and businesses. Shifting partnerships will be a theme in July. Leadership, especially the leadership at large, which is largely corrupt and no longer a voice or representation of the people in probably most countries on planet Earth, will be facing a reckoning. This is a time where the law is being laid down, so to speak. We are also moving into a time where there will be a major focus on healing of the body and the infringement on rights and sovereignty of our bodies and our work and our capacity to support ourselves. We are also looking at a reworking of what it means to be in reciprocity in relationships. I'm going to move through all of these here piece by piece, but I wanted to give you a really nice framing for the themes of July 2026. I am calling this time the new enlightenment, the new scientific revolution, and the new renaissance, all wrapped up in one. I'm going to do another podcast where I go over the historical correspondences to these cycles. There's just way too much in July as it is for me to run through too much of that, but I have found some incredible research that if there's any doubt, if there's any questioning, when we look at these, and I'll mention a few of them today. Oh, there's monkeys outside. I'm in Costa Rica. They're always a good sign to lighten up and be playful. So if there's any doubt or confusion around, is this really what Zoey and other astrologers are saying? There's just so much evidence. I'm trained in science and as a scientist as well as an artist, and I look for evidence. I look for hard evidence and sound evidence, and personal experience is without a doubt perhaps the most valid form of evidence there is. So the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will be of the people, for the people, by the people. It will be in spaces where we gather in the flesh and we connect our nervous systems from a regulated state, and we share our genius, and we receive others, and we expand our perspectives beyond what we previously held. And this is the key theme of July. The key astrological feature of July is Uranus trining Pluto. I spoke about this in episode 1 of Resonant Futures, so go on back there, check it out if you haven't seen it. This will perfect the first time between now and 2028. This is a long transit because these are outer planets that move slowly. And it will perfect July 18th. This is between Uranus and Gemini, Uranus being the higher mind, innovation, technology, the future, space, AI, all of that in the sign of Gemini, which is also the sign of technology, the internet, communication, socializing, all of our messaging and technology as a whole, but more so how we use that to communicate. That's forming a trine, which is a supportive, flowing, benefic aspect to Pluto, Lord of the underworld, Lord of transformation. And I'm really playing with Pluto more as a feminine energetic because I believe that power is actually a feminine quality, power versus force being one of those. Sometimes things need to be forced. Sometimes things just need to happen in our lives. We just got to pull ourselves out of bed. But power in the Pluto essence is actually magnetic, deeply rooted and seated in the body. It's what I call unfuckable withness. When we have a strong Pluto, we are unfuckable with. Why is this? Because Pluto also rules the underworld, aka the correspondence to our shadow, the parts of ourselves that we reject, the taboo, that which is scary, that which we don't know how to face because society and culture told us it was bad, it was wrong. The number one thing placed there has been our power as people who have been collectively disempowered to be extorted by the systems that exist. And Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius, which is collectivism, also futurism. It is similar to the Aquarian words the Uranian words I was using because Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. So it is technology, the future, space, extraterrestrials, the strange, the unexplainable, the bizarre, the sudden, unexpected, the big quantum leaps that suddenly catapult you to a higher state of awareness. The promise of Uranus, something I love about Uranus, is I call it the safeguard against spiritual ego. This is because spiritual ego can be like, I know this, I've learned this. And a lot of times that's just actually our resistance to needing to do the work yet again on something that we feel like we've done a lot of work on. And it's natural. But Uranus is the safeguard because Uranus is the promise that there is always a higher, more liberated expression. And so no matter how far we've come, no matter how much work we've done, no matter how much we think we know, there's always a higher frame of perspective available. This is the promise of Uranus, which kind of rhymes, which I like. And so Aquarius, where we have Pluto for the next 20 years, we might be at 19 years now, he's been there about a year, is like power amongst the elite in technology, in its shadow form, its transhumanism. It is cold brutality of space. It is disconnection from our humanness, right? It is too much technology. It is the wrong kind of technology, the kind that doesn't integrate with the human nervous system, which would be ruled by Virgo and Gemini. And Gemini is where we have Uranus. So literally, we are in this taking the power back over technology to support the human nervous system instead of deplete it. It is my belief that when we have technology that is attuned to a frequency that heals and supports our nervous system and grounds us and mitigates against addictive patterns with screens and technology, that we will be moving in truly the right direction in our technological world. So not only is this Uranus-Pluto aspect forming, but as you may have heard in the last podcast, we are in a basket formation, which looks kind of like this. And this is between Pluto and Aquarius, Neptune and Aries, Jupiter and Leo, and Uranus and Gemini. This is a one in once in history opportunity. So we are not just transitioning from a 2,000-year age or completing a 26,000-year age. We are literally shifting everything in society. I do think we can expect to see incredible revolutions coming forth this year. I think this because this is the opening trine from a seeding that started in 1965. That's when Uranus and Pluto were together in the sign of Virgo, which is the earth. And we saw the summer of love. We saw protests against war. We saw civil rights and feminist and humanitarian activism. And as I said in the last episode, I do not believe that the people have ever actually been at war with the people. It has always been those in power extracting from the people and using the people to fight these wars. And if we look at that time, those were peaceful protests. And I do believe that we are going to see a resurgence of this year that will carry over the next probably handful of years. This, I believe, is going to start with Jupiter opposite Pluto, which it is pretty much the entire month of July. Jupiter is the law. Jupiter is law on Earth. Neptune is God's law, or we might say oneness, the divine oneness of all creation. Everything comes from source and returns to source. Everything is eternal. Nothing is born or ever dies, etc., etc. But on Earth, we come from different mamas, different families, different backgrounds. This life is finite. This physical experience, this Earth has laws. That is the realm of Jupiter. And it is not wrong that exists. It just happens to be the Earth game that we signed up for. And so understanding Jupiter, the law on Earth, it still reflects those divine laws. It's not disconnected. And it is taught in the Hermetic, alchemical, Rosicrucian, Vedic, Buddhist lineages, the world over, that if you wish to master and transcend and break free of these laws, you do so by learning the laws, studying them, contemplating them, understanding them. The laws are like keys. They're like spiritual truths and lessons that when we deepen into them and we learn through them, we awaken. For example, how many people have gone through a great loss or death and then realized later that taught them the most indispensable, invaluable things that they ever learned, right? And so when we learn through these laws, we expand our consciousness. And this has been my path for the last 20 years, deeply contemplating the Hermetic laws, the scientific laws and constants, mathematical constants of physics. And I will do an episode where I correspond those for you at a later date, maybe this month, because we have this Jupiter-Pluto. Jupiter is law. Pluto in Aquarius is the power elite and the technocracy. And when they're in an opposition, this means it's a showdown. This means it's time to, I was going to say, bring home the bacon. Face the bacon. It's the time to face off with this, right? And we're already seeing it. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction February 20th of 2026 was in Aries, one of the signs of leadership. Now Jupiter's entering Leo today, June 30th, to stay for a year. Leo is the sign of the king or the queen. So it's like the head figurehead of leadership. Aries is a little more boots on the ground leadership, but they both speak about the right use of power. and Pluto is power, and Jupiter is the law. And we know that there are already hearings in the UN that are confronting many of these misuses of power that threatened our sovereignty over the last number of years. And I believe that this will continue and we can keep a lookout for it. If you are in a position of leadership, there's no more powerful time to tune in and really align with the new codes for leadership on the planet. This is about those we serve, and this is also about us. So this brings me to the next important theme, which is that the North and South Node have been in Pisces and Virgo for the last 18 months, and they are shifting signs at the end of this month on July 26th. The true North Node moves into Aquarius and the South Node into Leo. The South Node also drains toxicity in the sign it's in. This is true of whatever sign it's in. Every sign has a light and a shadow and the journey in between. But the South Node is going to expose toxicity within the Leo archetype, which is, again, the leader, the figureheads, the big wigs, the faces that we actually see. Pluto will align to the North Node, and we're going to see over the next year some serious reckoning with the misuse of power. And so if you are a leader and you are working to show up and be of service and be in that divine service as a leader, we are cultivating things like compassion, like empathy, like care for others. But the South Node in Virgo, and this is true for all of us, whether we're leading ourselves or leading others, because sovereign leadership is always about leading ourselves first, we are going to need to have some healthy boundaries around what we're here for and what we're not. And I'm seeing this all around me. We are shifting, people around me are shifting their relationships. They're shifting what they're available for and what they're not. I do think that this will be a more short-term effect. After July, I think it'll lighten up. I think July might be a time where a lot of people are like, whoa, I've got a big mission. I'm feeling really on fire, or I need to figure out my mission. I don't know what it is, but it's not what I've been doing. And people are going to be reorienting themselves in their relationship. So if people are needing space, if they're needing a break, if they're needing more alone time, if they're wanting to stay focused, don't take it personally, and maybe take it as an opportunity to look at where you can redirect your own energy into your own purpose, your own passion, the revolution of your life. Because if we want to support the budding revolution on the planet, which I believe will be protesting against war, it'll be protesting against corruption in leadership, it'll be demanding change in our rights, demanding for rights of our sovereignty of our body and our health and nature and weather manipulation. There's a whole list. I'm already seeing it everywhere, and it's going to increase. And I think that this is one of the most powerful times for us to consolidate our efforts, to come together and to make real decisions on how we want to do that. And so if you are in a revamp of yourself, allow yourself to look at, really tune in. If there were no barriers to what you were here to do, what would you do? Where would you dedicate your time? How would you spend your energy? If this was your last year on Earth, for example. So let's move through the month. I tried to break it down into weeks. It's nearly impossible to do this concisely. So I'm calling week 1 the Dreams of Electric Twins. This is because we have Mars entering Gemini on July 2nd, who will immediately move into a conjunction with Uranus and Gemini, and they will both square the nodes. This is another aspect of people, like, where the nodes are our destiny. The nodes are that sense of, I have to do this, I have to be here, this is where I'm going, I gotta go here. And something square the nodes is a choice point, and it usually means that we need to embrace it. And Mars and Uranus is a very electrified masculine, not men, although it can show up as men. It is our drive, our focus, our like, I got to step away. I got to go take care of this. I'm here to make things happen right now. This is required. This is important in life if we want to accomplish things sometimes. Sometimes it's a lot lighter, but this energy can feel a little drastic. This energy can feel, it might feel a little sudden, like you're suddenly like, whoa, I need to shift gears in my life. I need to take space. I need to nurture these downloads coming in. I need to record 2 versions of this podcast like I am doing now, day 2 in a row, because thank you, Mercury retrograde, for losing the recording of the one yesterday. But sometimes that's exactly what needed to happen. This is simultaneously with a Mercury retrograde in Cancer, which stationed retrograde June 29th and will be retrograde until July 23rd. So keeping in mind that signing contracts, things like this are not necessarily favored during a Mercury retrograde. And I can state that's true. There are exceptions. But what's interesting is this is also one of the best times to launch things all year. So I was guiding a lot of people to do so in June, those of which have been with me and are working with me in order to capture this energy without the Mercury retrograde. But honestly, the Mercury retrograde is the least of my concerns on a lot of levels this month. But I will say that communication can get sticky around our needs, around our feelings, around feeling reciprocity, and what that means. What this is signaling to me is that as we birth into a new species, into this future human, as we are becoming future human, the very way that we relate to one another is changing. I don't know that we have an option to opt out of that. With greater consciousness comes greater awareness, comes a different perspective, and comes a new choice point. I'm watching this monkey eat from the trees. He's so cute. He's got a big beard. So let's look at monkeys for a second. That seems to be a symbol alive in my field. If we think about tribal humans, if we think about what it meant to live in more of a village, which we have many people that are like, we want this return to the village. I don't think we're going to return back to the old village. Because now we have a phone, and instead of knocking on someone's door, we can text them that we need something. And now we're doing this work where we sit on computers and we get in these beautiful flow states, and we have to work hard to achieve that, right? To maintain that. At least I know I do. And we might not want interruptions. We might not welcome them in the same way. And yet there is this tendency of people putting themselves in boxes and hiding from people and avoiding people. And now we're calling people introverts, which I don't actually believe that introverts or extroverts exist. I believe that is pathologizing the response of humans to an unhealthy collective nervous system. So what I see as the key in Jupiter and Venus just joining in Cancer last month. Now Jupiter enters Leo. We have this Mercury retrograde in Cancer at the same time. All of this is pointing for me to the new operating system of the human nervous system. And I believe it's important to be mindful of where we are pathologizing ourselves, making ourselves broken, putting ourselves in a box, or limiting ourselves in any way, shape, or form for the way we responded to an unhealthy, dysregulated collective nervous system, which is what I call culture. Culture is the collective human nervous system. Of course, you're an introvert if you're sensitive and the only culture you had to connect with was dysregulated and unhealthy. But does that mean that's who and what you are? Or does that mean that in a healthy, regulated collective nervous system, you are like any healthy human on the planet who lives from their truth of sovereign oneness, that when I want to be with people, I'm with people. And when I don't, I choose not to. And in a healthy collective nervous system, it is safe and easy for us to say, I'm going to stay home tonight. I need some alone time. I'm grieving something. Actually, I might not respond a lot for a few months. And no, I don't know how long. And thank you for understanding and loving me. These are the kinds of shifts that we are welcoming, that we are seeing in the planet. And I'm seeing it in people's relationships all around me, in my own personal life, and the remembrance of compassion, that one person's needs are not in competition with another person's needs. That if we are truly all one, if what you need is truly what you need, then it's going to be what's best for me too, on some level, right? Because if we're not in good form to show up for others, it's probably, sometimes it's actually better that we don't than if we show up in poor form. And now there's more misunderstanding or what have you. Now, of course, I can hear what you might be thinking. What do we do when we have to show up, when we are required to show up? This is what the final month of the South Node in Virgo and the North Node in Pisces is illuminating for us. And I see this with everyone around me. And it's been showing up for me as I'm relaunching this podcast, is the theme of burnout. South Node in Virgo. It's the shadows of Virgo, the martyr, the over-serving, the serving to be loved and accepted, the over-giving, the hyper-regimented. I need to control and everything needs to be perfect. And there's always something wrong and there's more to do. So we're going to be balancing this within ourselves first so that we can heal the entire culture around work. This is also bringing to light in mass scale the larger issue of the top-down systems that have literally programmed and bred humanity in the Western world, and I know particularly in the United States, to be worker bees and to fit into a 9-to-5 job instead of actually educating free thinking brilliance within humanity. We are deconditioning a lot from our nervous system. So be gentle with yourself, but also be honest, because that North Node is in Pisces and it's teaching us to trust, to expand, to allow infinite potential to come in, to dream bigger. Sometimes we can only dream as far as our nervous system will allow us to relax into that state. So understanding that this comes in steps, in phases, and wherever we are is perfect. If you are a leader in an organization, in a team, stewarding an ecosystem, think about how you can shift the culture within your workspace to support this. Luckily, we have new technology coming online that is really supporting less burnout, less stress, and being able to offload the beta brainwave state or the left brain into AI, which is what I think is one of the most beautiful contributions of AI. I will be doing an episode on data centers because that South Node in Virgo is also showing us where our technology is actually depleting our environment still to this day. And there are solutions. And if you know them, please reach out to me because this is something I am tracking as an ecologist as well as a futurist. And I think it is of prime importance at this time. That being said, I also see where AI as a tool, just as a tool, without all of that attached to it, imagining it's being used and created in a good way, imagine what that's unlocking for us. The power of the human imagination is being optimized at this time by not having to do all the little busy work, by not having to rack our brains and our nervous systems, by being able to allow this incredible tool to support us in creating. I also think we need to be extremely mindful, and this is going to amplify this year, of where we are easily exploited and vulnerable as creators. Because keep in mind that those creating AI are well aware that they need human innovation and genius and creativity to make this thing run, to keep feeding into it. So if you are tracking or know of any movements to honor our rights as creators, what we create towards privacy, towards open source. Some people say that's the answer. Some people say it's not. I'll be bringing a speaker on to talk about that very topic within the coming months and unpack some of these things, right? Because as you can see, we are literally tracking this entire revolution of what it means to be humans. The other piece that's going to be shifting is governance models. So those who are working in new governance, this is your year. If you have been seeking to bring change within the political system, God bless you. You are courageous, and this is going to be a powerful year. It also may come with a lot of power dynamics, which of course you're probably prepared for, because that's what that world is all about. That's what it's become dominated by, as opposed to being a space of service and representation and supporting the flowing of human culture and resources into its highest state. Human potential is going to skyrocket this year. We are seeing literal changes in the brains, in the nervous system, in the blood, in the cellular biology, in the DNA of humanity. This is so exciting because I predicted this. Like, when did I predict this? I started speaking about this probably in 2016 and 2017 when I saw Uranus going into Taurus, which is the body, right? And that being like, Uranus is up leveling the human nervous system. Uranus has now entered Gemini, and that's the mind. So now our nervous system has to come online. And the perspective shift and the freeing and liberating of our mind from constructs that are outdated. Beliefs and our belief systems are going to be heavily tested this month. Beliefs are one of the places that humanity has been most easily, manipulated, and it almost came out humiliated. Interesting slip. Our belief systems is one of the places where humanity has been most gravely manipulated, potentially to the point of humiliation, potentially to an embarrassing level. I know that's been true for me when I was younger, and it comes from an innocent place of trying to find answers in a wild world. It comes from a place of needing sound philosophy and faith and systems of understanding in order to navigate life successfully and with a sense of peace in our hearts. And what I'm seeing throughout the month of July is that we will start to be able to see where our belief systems have gotten out of date. And I like to say, belief is like a horse. Stay with me. Belief is like a horse. That horse can carry you down valleys, through the rivers, over the mountain, and through the woods until you reach the ocean, or until you reach the edge of a cliff. And when you get there, you're going to need a new vehicle to carry you the next leg of the journey. And beliefs are like this. They are beautiful. They will come in a time, and they serve exactly what we need at this time in our lives, at this phase of our evolution. They get us through a deep valley of grief. They get us over and up a huge mountain of accomplishment. And yet when we reach the ocean, now we must learn to sail. And when we reach the edge of a great precipice, now we must learn to fly. Humanity is learning to fly right now. We are in a time where being able to hold our beliefs and shift them rapidly and wisely is going to carry us into this next arc of human evolution. But what I believe is our grounding point, right? Because that can feel a little shaky. What our grounding point is our values. Those values can live through the different beliefs that carry us through the various parts of the terrain of human experience. Values like unconditional love, sovereignty, beauty, truth are timeless. And this is what I think we will start to see emerge is our common humanity. I don't think we need a bunch of heads of state, and God knows how the random people get chosen in rooms like the UN, judges that come out of the old system, the 2030 agenda, all of this. I don't think that this is really leading us to the true voice of the people, although I know many powerful roots groups are in those spaces doing good work. Thank you. Potentially that's where this segues. But there is also what we want to watch out for, which is one world order agenda, things that look like the humanitarian future, things that speak to the one humanity voice, and yet are just so totally removed and inaccessible to the average person, and yet are so outdated in their leadership models, right? So this is truly what I feel is going to start shifting, and we're going to see movements speaking up to change this. I know I feel a feeling like I just can't sit quiet anymore. And I know that many of you are too. This will show up differently in different people's lives, depending on your chart and where you are in your journey. This could just be speaking up in a personal relationship, shifting with career, which is going to be a major theme. So, week one is what is the breaking point? What's got to go? What's got to change? Where do you need to let go of a limiting belief? Where are we addicted to the burnout, addicted to the hustle, addicted to the grind? I know for me, even just trying to I'm recovering from burnout over the last 4 months from producing way too many events in a year and writing astrological calendars and all sorts of things, way more than any normal human should. I've been recovering for 4 months, and I've recently just in the last week was like, I have to do this. I have to start the podcast. This is what's happening. And I'm having to really pause myself as I try to reestablish a new connection point in my nervous system with how to interface with technology, with my body, with nature, and with work. So this is literally the moment to reorient and to expand your vision into something new that you previously couldn't see. We also have to release the identity of the martyr. Please stop praising people for overgiving and self-sacrificing. Please stop doing that in yourself. Let's start praising or thanking people for taking care of themselves. July 5th, Mars will trine Pluto. This is going to give us a huge surge of energy to stand in our power. Again, we want to be mindful to stay in our center when we communicate. This can be really big drives around power dynamics, etc. And just remember that true power, when we stand in our power, it always empowers others. Because if we speak our truth to someone, we're actually empowering them with truth instead of disempowering them with a lie, with telling them what they want to hear, with giving them what we think they want. is actually disempowering that person, if we really think about it. And then July 7th, Neptune goes retrograde in Aries. So this is the first time that Neptune's going to retrograde since Neptune and Saturn joined in back in February, and Saturn will go retrograde at the end of the month on July 26th. So we are going to start integrating. When things go retrograde, we revise, rework, and we integrate it deeper into our psyche. So that Saturn-Neptune alignment in Aries in February is responsible for exposing secret societies, a lot of the secret dark things or misuse of power by elite, by leaders, by governments, by military, because we're speaking Aries, the sign of the military. These things have been exposed more and more, but we've also been seeing it in ourselves, right? Where it's like, that is just like not my authentic self. It's exposed to us, right? Like where we've been out of alignment with our truth and with our center. So I'm really excited to see how we integrate this more deeply. This is also where I was telling people that first half of 2026 has been go get to the launch in June, July, and then we're going to start revising and editing and testing all of our systems. We're going to revisit our foundations to see how strong they are. Are they built for beauty? Are they built for beauty? As much as all of this revolution and this change and everything that we're all working towards to birth new systems, the new meta system for the world is being birthed through thousands of different apps and platforms that in 28 and 29, when the current systems fall, which I can guarantee you, they will definitely be transitioning out of what they have been for the last couple thousand years, but especially the last 250 years. These new systems are going to rise to replace. And we want to keep in mind that the frequency from which we create these and the way that we're actually moving in our day-to-day lives as we do this gets imprinted into that technology. And we want to remember that technology imprints itself into the human nervous system. How much peace and joy and self-care and fun. I'm seeing a lot of people in a rigid, nose to the grindstone time. Yes, life comes in cycles. Sometimes that is the way we are moving in the moment. And are we allowing ourselves permission for bliss, for joy, for checking out in a positive way, like merging with nature, laughing until your belly aches with your friends, not taking it all so seriously. Tell some jokes, lighten up, let it go. Mistakes are how we learn and how we grow. And so this wrenching out of that Virgo shadow is letting all that go and stepping into the Piscean frequency of ecstatic bliss and joy, because that state needs to inform what we are building as much as anything else. If what we are building, we hope to design for a future where people can have more time and space and freedom to do that. That means we have to create from that frequency. We have to be experiencing that frequency in a healthy way. There are the unhealthy ways of Pisces, which are substances, checking out, scrolling, la 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 la, right? Checking ourselves, watching ourselves, right? Because and then at the end of the day, we're only human. And we are integrating so many layers of information and shifting on the planet. So today I just kept thinking, God, I wish I could just go lay by the ocean and play in the water with my friends. That's all I want to do. But this mission is priority right now to bring this to all of you. And then I'm going to go do that for the rest of the week. Okay, so first week, electric twins. I also think we might see something around doubles, like the agents, the AI twins, like this kind of stuff coming to the surface that was previously hidden. We might have thought we were looking at something that was real. We are definitely in the Uranus-Pluto trine all month going to see an explosion of multiples of the same thing being created. This, I believe, is going to lead to this huge AI bubble, which we will probably see financial repercussions for in 28 and 29. I'm also waiting to see what plays out over this eclipse because that will be a major determining factor. But there are going to be multiples. And so what will likely happen is then we'll have the tech that can link and merge all the tech. I don't think it's wrong that we have multiple people creating the same things around the world. I also believe that the age of competition will start to wane, and that is indicated through the Saturn-Neptune alignment back in February, which is resetting our understanding of ambition and sovereignty as sovereign oneness, where we're no longer in competition to see who's going to be the top and take the market and go for the win and be the number one app, but it's going to be where we merge all together. I actually think that system will be here and within the next 2 years. If you're working on it or you know someone who is, please talk to me. I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to interview you. Okay, week 2 of July. Venus in Virgo will hit the South Node. Venus enters Virgo on July 9th and aligns with the South Node opposing the North Node on the 11th, right before the Mercury Cazimi, which is like the moment of truth in the Mercury retrograde, which will happen July 12th. July 13th, we have Venus square Uranus, and the 14th, the new moon in Cancer. I'm actually going to save the lunations talks for separate podcast episodes because honestly, they're pretty much just amplifying everything else I'm talking about here. Venus in Virgo, I think, is coming in to heal the burnout, to heal the distortions around our work, our labor, our efforting, our striving. Because the reality is having high standards and seeking excellence is beautiful. It is what we want. It brings us into our mastery. I call Virgo the sign of mastery. Check out any great master of anything from art to science to sports, and you'll find a lot of Virgo or a lot of 6th house in there. And I think Venus is coming in to heal and remind us the positive qualities of Virgo. So this first week, we might be in some burnout. We might have to cut some things off of our list. We might need to take some space. We might have some higher realizations. We might suddenly have drive to do things, but we're figuring out how to do it. This is also on a collective scale. This is like squaring off with states of power, war. I already saw that the largest bomb since Hiroshima was dropped in Palestine. There is a breaking point of the use of force, which is currently being funded by the taxation of the labor of the people who are just trying to feed their children. This is not where we're going in the future. And I'm pretty sure you all agree with me. If you're here, we are actively working. If we want to heal that system, we want to see a shift in that system, but we feel disempowered, which might be a very real thing. We find our power within. So healing and confronting this in ourselves, learning to say no in ourselves. Enough is enough. I will create a new way. This is where it begins. And week 2 of July brings in the joy of our sacred work, the joy of mastery and refinement and making it as beautiful as possible, the joy and the beauty of our diet, our nutrition, our yoga, our nervous system regulation, our breath work. All of these come under the sign of the priestess, aka Virgo. The priest or priestess keeps the temple clean and pure for spirit to flow. We do this in ourselves so that our consciousness, Pisces, from the ether, opposite sign of Virgo, may flow through the body effectively. This might be a time where you feel called to do a cleanse, a detox, to clean house physically. All of this is a great idea, especially with Mercury retrograde in Cancer. This might also take place in the workplace. We might see shifts. We might see this team, some of us are working together great, some of us aren't. And I'd like to posture the question of, what does it look like in our ideal world if we're like, this isn't working on this team? How do we do that in a way that doesn't drop anyone, that still holds us, that still gives everyone the time to continue to care for ourselves? Because there's a lot of fear around this and trauma, honestly, in the collective nervous system, especially post 2020 Earth, in just suddenly potentially losing your capacity to care for yourself, provide for yourself and your family. So I'm just welcoming in that these codes are coming in, and we have access to finding these solutions now. There is always an omni-win for everyone. If someone's on the team, take myself, if I've been on a team and I'm working and I think I need this job, but I really don't actually like this job. And like the teams, we don't know if this is really working. It's usually not working for me either, right? We want to talk about how sometimes there's a solution, and sometimes that solution is that this just isn't what we want. So when I say we hold our beliefs lightly this month, I really mean it, because there can be drastic redirects, especially in the first half of the month. We will want to mitigate and balance that out of shocking, traumatic experiences and towards liberating experiences for ourselves and for others through compassion and care and truth simultaneously. Sometimes this is just being really honest with ourselves, right? So that Venus square the nodes is just allowing us to restory what is valuable to us and to shift our perspective on beauty towards that which we value most deeply. July 12th is that moment of clarity for the Mercury Cazimi. And week 3 sparks us into new action. So week 3, we will have Jupiter trine Neptune. We will have Uranus sextile. Okay, so this is like our little sextile moment. So sextiles in astrology are quick little 60-degree aspects. They're very short, and they essentially are where intelligence meets opportunity to create something new. But we have to have both, right? We have to be putting our intelligence out there and sharing it and actively in our brilliance for that opportunity to even land, and for that opportunity to be drawn to us. And when opportunities show up, we have to be strategic in our intelligence to apply, oh, this is an opportunity for this. I want to move towards it in this way. Or no, thanks. I don't really desire that opportunity right now, but I could see it being useful in this other way. So it gives us space for innovation, but it requires our participation. Unlike a trine that can be a little more, trines actually also require our participation, but sometimes trines will just drop blessings into our laps, but we can still squander them if we don't do anything with them, for example. So week 3 is Uranus sextile Neptune, Uranus trine Pluto, Mars sextile Saturn, Jupiter trine Neptune, Jupiter opposes Pluto, Jupiter sextiles Uranus. This is essentially the basket formation, the cradle of the new civilization for planet Earth. And really, I should say for humanity, but as humans who are the stewards of planet Earth. This is our remembering what that means and how we want to cultivate that. We are empowered in ways we have never been before, especially those of us in the Western world. And we know that there are people who are gravely disempowered on this planet. I believe that radical joy and hope is in service to the whole planet. And I know that there can be guilt moving through the collective around being in our joy when there's so much suffering. And it can feel like this isn't fair. We're not allowed to do it. We're not allowed to have it. We need to suffer with, we need to martyr. The age of Pisces is ending, and the main symbol of the age of Pisces was Jesus Christ nailed to a cross. We have been programmed to worship the martyred version of this incredible teacher who came to earth, instead of venerating the incredible teachings that this teacher brought. We've all been programmed to be in martyrdom and self-sacrifice. We were shown that's what gets worship for 2,000 years. So my invitation is that perhaps radical joy can elevate the frequency of the planet. Perhaps radical hope can elevate the frequency of the planet and ignite and inspire enough people to spark a movement that can catch this cradle of civilization, which I'm seeing as like an updraft, that if we can catch it, it can catapult us into a completely new reality. This is quantum jump time, baby. So whatever that work is in the first part of the month, whatever needs to go, whatever's not working, whatever might need renegotiated, this is always through our own realization of ourselves. This is always through self-reflection and self-empowerment. This is not about blame. This is not about others were wrong or they're not a fit. The reality is, if it's not working for one person, it's not working for anybody. How do we move from the truth of sovereign oneness, which I spoke about in episode 1? And how do we move from that into this third week of July, which is going to be a massive updraft on the planet? I want you to be grounded. I want you to be regulating your nervous system. I want you to have ample time to receive the downloads and the visions, and to trust that your vision is absolutely needed, whatever that is. And if you don't want to share it on the internet, I don't blame you. But one of the most important things that will happen, and we're already seeing it as a trend, I know because I'm an event producer for the last 6 years primarily, in-person events are skyrocketing. People are spending money there. That industry is in a massive growth. It will continue to grow as Jupiter enters Leo. We will see expansion in things like film, parties, festivals, concerts, events, gambling, sports, all forms of diversion and ways that we come together as people. This is where movements are actually birthed. I've never seen a real movement happen on the internet yet, and I don't know that it can. It can spark there. It can be nurtured there further, longer over time, right? This is a beautiful thing, and it's not the same as coming together. This is supporting the regenerative movement, regenerative land projects, intentional communities, connection apps, the new social apps, movements for new governance, movements for freedom of expression, and our right to free speech. I'm worried that because yesterday when I recorded this, I spoke a lot about free speech, and that's why my recording disappeared. I've also had my Claude limited my search because I was revamping my logo to be the squared circle, which is an esoteric proof founded in the Pythagorean mystery schools that was considered unsolvable, but is actually solvable. And it requires you to merge the left and right hemispheres of your brain and achieve the sacred marriage, which all of these systems that have preserved the ancient teachings that liberate human consciousness and activate our superpowers have been using. I spoke a little bit about l'androgyne in the last episode and the sacred marriage that represents. This does not mean that we are going to become genderless in a human form. This is speaking about the divine union of our inner masculine and feminine. This is going to be very important this month, so I want to spend a little time to break it down. I've noticed this conflation of two of the Hermetic principles with one another. The principle of gender and the principle of polarity are two different Hermetic principles. They are two different laws in science. They are not the same thing. The principle of gender is the principle of creation. It is how creation inhales and exhales. Polarity is just two sides of the same thing. That's all it is. Feminine has a polarity. Masculinity has a polarity. Temperature has a polarity. Wetness has a polarity, right? Light has a polarity. Gender is not polarity. Gender is the creative principle of the universe. And I think it's very interesting that it's gotten so distorted, because when we understand this principle, we unlock our human potential. The principle of gender, they use masculine and feminine, but I want to stay away from this being sequestered to men and women, because it is not. This is universal. All men have a masculine and a feminine. All women have a masculine and a feminine. I will use yin and yang for this example. Yang is directive. It is focusing our energy. It is executing our energy. It is our drive, our passion, our willpower, our ability to execute and drive things out. It is actually up and out as in its elemental form. The feminine is not submissive, and it is not passive. The feminine is changing. The feminine is the great mystery. The ever-changing nature of creation is not passive. It is changing. That is the only way you can actually define the feminine or the yin principle. In Chinese medicine, the feminine is the organizing principle of reality. So you will find the creation, as it changes, it moves in patterns and it naturally organizes itself. That pulse through creation that keeps it driving, that is the yang, driving it forward. But the feminine informs the system. The masculine executes the system in every person. This does not mean that men are here to lead and women are here to follow, or that the masculine should be allowed to dominate and the feminine should be passive and submit. And this whole distortion, and it's funny, in the polarity world, they're calling it polarity, but they're applying it to gender. And so this is dangerous in the sense that it disempowers us from understanding the natural laws of creation that unlock our human potential, that free us into our highest state of creatorship. And we cannot be in our creatorship if we do not understand and practice the principle of gender in its truth. Now, it makes perfect sense, and there's no shame if we're confusing these things. I would say of the 7 Hermetic principles, the principle of gender has been the one I have spent the most time on in my life. I started studying this 14 years ago, and it has been a primary cornerstone of my practice in my own spiritual evolution and how I work with clients. And truly understanding the principle of gender is understanding that creation creates through the yin and the yang. And that as soon as you create yang, you create yin. And as soon as you create yin, you create yang. Because as soon as I give, you are now receiving. And as soon as you receive, I am able to give. This is ebbing and flowing all the time. If we want to create sexual polarity in our relationship, then you're working with the principle of polarity, and that's fine. That's beautiful. You can play with what it means to be a man or a woman in different gender roles in that realm. That's beautiful. That can be amazing. Zero problems with that. But that is not the principle of gender. And it makes sense that we've been so confused because the feminine principle of gender has been so heavily, no, I should say, gender has been heavily tampered with as a tool to divide the people, to divide the sexes, specifically by trying to force each sex into only one gender, which we are not in the universal sense. We all have yin and yang, and we will not be a healthy, thriving creator if we do not understand and nourish all parts of this. Discipline, to use a yang word, all parts of this. So let's take a little example, which was first dawned on me again 14 years ago when I was first reading the Kybalion by William Walker Atkinson under the alias of the Three Initiates. And I don't believe that this is in the current, it's not in the new updated model. I actually need to find I don't have that old book anymore, the old print of when it had this opening piece, which really opened my eyes because I was awakening in college and university and post-university to the way that systems have repressed and feminism and the patriarchy. And I was like learning all of this, right? And really, I'd been aware of the misuse of power from a very young age, but I was really dissecting the theories and the philosophies around this of all these beautiful minds seeking to reconcile this. And the dominant paradigm around this is that the feminine's been oppressed, disempowered, and the masculine has been empowered and oppressed the feminine. It's now coming to light, especially thank you, Chiron and Aries, for the last 7 years, that it's not so black and white, and really nothing is. So this Uranus and Gemini is dissolving black and white thinking right now. And so this is why I want to bring this to light, because this Uranus-Pluto trine is very much about the principle of gender and what it means to really understand the duality of this universe in a way that unlocks our superpowers. And William Walker Atkinson wrote in that opening passage, I believe it was the foreword to the Kybalion, that it is not what we think, that people were forced into their masculine and made to drive and made to just produce, and that the feminine was just totally taken offline. But it was actually more nuanced than this. What happened was that people were disempowered from their masculine on the whole. I'm not talking about the top leaders. Think of the masses here. Were taken out of their power to execute what they really wanted. And they were forced into their feminine in the sense that they were forced to, you'll receive what we give you, and exacerbated and disempowered the feminine. So that ability to organize and inform through value systems was completely taken offline. It was distorted. So what the systems did, what the patriarchy really did, was it disempowered the feminine from being in her organizing and value informing capacities, and then forced her into her shadow, manipulation, deceit, misuse of power. The the fear of death and rebirth, the loss of ritual, and the masculine was limited only to a few who could actually go and do what they wanted. But the rest of us were stuck with just working and showing up and living in this system. And so the healing of this is seeing the incredible nuance, because you can't actually put humans into only one state. Now, turning humans into a vegetable who are just consuming content, buying things, all of that's all feminine shadow. The material, consumerism, receiving, gathering of resources, this is all feminine zone. This is the yin principle. So it disempowered the power of the feminine and consolidated power in the hands of just a few masculine, and then exacerbated the shadows of the feminine. I say this because I'm so amazed time and time again at the subtlety at which the human mind and system can be manipulated. We also want to keep in mind that the powers that be have utilized the shadows of the feminine against us through manipulation, coercion, magnetism, star power. My book, Becoming Future Human, goes into all of this in detail and lays it out in a way that then frames it for the age of Aquarius Leo so that we can look at it. So I'm deep in these contemplations right now. And one of the values of this podcast is sovereignty and empowerment. Because when we are empowered with knowledge, something else of the masculine that was taken just for the few to have the knowledge of how these things actually work. When we are empowered with knowledge, we are liberated. I know there's a lot of talk that just knowing things doesn't mean much, just knowing information, it's not really wisdom. Okay, great. Wisdom is definitely the next level, but do not be confused that the power of knowledge has liberated societies around the world, has liberated entire classes of humanity time and time again. We are in a time where we can access greater knowledge than ever before. And I even found where that is being limited in AI just from looking up a simple sacred geometry practice, because it's apparently dangerous in some way. Perhaps that mathematical equation can be used dangerously, but so can calculus in general. So when we look at this knowledge, we want to hold it really sacred. And I love that people are finding pieces and they want to share their voice. I love that people are sharing and that they're standing in their truth. And they're like, I'm not afraid. I've got something to teach no matter where we are in the journey. Yes, and we want to be mindful where we're grabbing something like gender and we're twisting it. And now we're like creating an entire platform and coaching program around something that we really don't understand. And the reality is that most people don't understand that they don't understand. And it's truly innocent. And the reality is this is a perfect unfolding of how it's supposed to unfold for humanity, because we learn by messing up. That's just how it goes, right? But I've seen a lot of women suffer in this submissive, passive, feminine story because they're identifying that the feminine principle needs to be all that they are, and that there's actually teachers teaching this. And I just want to say that the principle of polarity is different from the principle of gender. They are absolutely different. Yin and yang as gender instantly creates the other, and it flows. And every human needs to have a unified masculine and feminine within themselves, or they will not function. On top of that, astrology has taught me that masculine and feminine are different for everyone. Your Mars can be in Pisces. It can be creative and flowy and empathic, or your Mars can be in Aries and it is straight and to the point. That's still your Mars. That's still how your divine masculine functions. Believe it or not, your feminine, your Venus can be in Cancer. It can be so motherly and nourishing and nurturing. Or it can be in Sagittarius and it's like it wants to adventure and learn. And that's still your feminine. The nuance of the human soul and of each human being is so precious and so divine. It is not reducible to black and white thinking. And that is what July is highlighting at the highest level. I think things are going to come out in the collective, as they already are, that are going to shatter black and white thinking at higher levels. So I want to prepare us to be holding our beliefs like a horse. Hold it like a horse. See if it's time for that plane, that hot air balloon, that sailboat to carry you to the next level. The principle of polarity shows us that everything has two sides. That includes the feminine, the masculine, heat, temperature, interest. I'm totally interested. I'm completely disinterested. Those are both levels of interest, actually. So I'll go into these more in future episodes, but I'm going to pause there and just say the next thing that is most profound is July 20th, Jupiter in Leo trining Neptune. This is delusions, distortions, expansion, spiritual truths, higher knowing. This is inflation. This is over speculation. I want people working in the markets to be really mindful. If you're wanting to make investments, you want to make big moves, really pause, because we might be a little without all the information. And also you might have found a unicorn, but really pause and hone that intuition. Week 4, the final week of July, I'm calling this a light shining on the illusions of the past. That which threatens sovereignty will not be stood for by the people any longer. This is where we have on the 26th, the North Node enters Aquarius, Saturn goes retrograde, Sun opposes Pluto, Sun trine Neptune, Sun conjunct Jupiter, Cazimi, and a full moon in Aquarius, setting us up for the August 12th total solar eclipse. All month of July, we are in eclipse season, my friends. We have entered the zone. And the highlight for me at the last part, I think this Saturn retrograde, they've been pretty challenging the last 2 times in Aries, mostly because it was the last time in Aries was the first time it retrograded in Aries, and that first retrograde in a new sign for a planet can be a little shaky. My hope is that it's not as shaky, but forewarning, end of the month, July 26th onward, might be like you're trying to drive things forward and they just don't want to go. You're trying to make things happen. They just don't want to land. Really let yourself rest, really let yourself integrate. I think we might see governments really slowing down, and even government shutdowns that have happened under Saturn retrogrades, stalling and decision making. I don't know that's necessarily how it will manifest this time around, but something to that nature. But the Sun opposing Pluto, trining Neptune, and conjoining Jupiter is big right before this full moon in Aquarius. This speaks to me about the creation and the blossoming that comes from the realization that the way we've been doing things is just not going to work anymore. These new ways that we are exploring and resetting our foundations all of July, expanding opportunities, insights, and potentials. There's this moment where it's like we have to face some shadow. We have to face a fear to get this off the ground. And it might be a little delusional at first. That can be for better or for worse. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's really not helpful. This can blow up egos, this can inflate, this can be like, nope, it's definitely possible. And later you just get pummeled. So we want to be mindful where ego and hubris and our shadows around Leo and Aries of wanting to be seen, wanting to be first, wanting to be popular, wanting to be liked can really be our big weak spot in this new era. While simultaneously, it's what we're growing into, right? And as we know, anytime we grow into something, we have to face the shadows of that thing. So be really mindful this final week of why you're doing things and from what place, because the beauty of these transits is to connect with higher meaning and purpose, humanitarianism, and giving to others. We also want to be mindful that we're not in a martyrdom, self-sacrificing, look at me, but genuine. How do we really show up in the highest service in all of our works right now? And Sun conjoining Leo on the 29th for this full moon in Aquarius is so sweet, is so beautiful. There's a big blessing coming for all of us. There's some radical hope, and I think it's going to be some of these movements that are going to start emerging over the next couple of months. And I believe that one will probably come to the forefront that restores our faith in humanity and in ourselves, in the unconditionally loving channel that is the truth of the human soul. That is what will be the great radical hope that carries us through into this new era. All right, my loves, that is enough for now. As always, I am available with some limitation, but I have some availability this month for readings, for clients, for theta, subconscious work. Reprogramming is going to be powerful this month in particular for clearing out the old paradigm systems from our nervous system, from the subconscious, to make way for us stepping into our greatness, stepping into our sovereign oneness, leadership, for the earth, for our communities, for ourselves, which is where it really begins. All right, my loves, thank you for joining me. And until next time, keep believing in our resonant future.